So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time, making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time, time.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We are here for a new week, and I have two incredible guests today. This afternoon, I have the incredible Mark Smith joining me, and tonight I have W.L. Hawkins joining me, and she's a returning guest from season 3. So be sure to check that out at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But before we get started, head over to the YouTube channel, give that a quick subscribe, ring that little doorbell, and you'll be notified when all these tea times are live and going out. We have different topics, different subjects. Some are trigger warnings. So if they do trigger you, please, I will not be offended if you cannot tune into that tea time. But today we have an incredible guest here. We have Mark Smith joining me. He's a former wrestler, author, recording artist, and he's a father. We're going to talk about a lot of things, and we're going to bring in the Bubba because I might just have some time where my tongue is just a twisting and a turning, and we're going to bring in the Bubba sister today. We're going to have some fun, we're going to have some laughs, we're going to have some jokes, and we're going to just sit back and have a good strong cup of tea. And if there is anything that you would like to know about Mark, and I haven't mentioned it, please go and check him out on my Facebook page, all that good stuff. But before we get started, here's a disclaimer, and then we're going to give you a little bit on Mark, and then we're going to get Mark in here, and he's going to spill a good strong tea with you all today. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz myself is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, may bring forward dialogue and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the giving time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment in taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussions for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It's significant to know that this show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection, and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in today's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I respect those wishes and will see you at a later show at a later date and time. And again, this year, following like last year, all tea times are on Thursday, unless it's a surprise tea time or a rescheduled tea time, which will be done on a Monday or Tuesday. So now a little bit on Mark. Well, Mark grew up in a broken home with an abusive dad, reverted to sports, and was due to report to spring training with the Atlantic Braves. He was attacked and lost his ability to pitch. His future would be pro wrestling and divorce. After another catastrophe, I know I'm not saying that word right, he stepped into a church, became a minister, a husband, a father, and a multiracial family of 8. Was raised in a community in rural Georgia. Racism was present and prominent in the Deep South. Married 30 years to Brenda, now living in Tennessee, USA. So let me get Mark in here, and we're going to spill some good strong tea together. Welcome, Mark. Now, did I get any of that right or wrong? Like,
No, you did well. I mean, what amazed me was the fact that you got out all those words. With my Southern accent, the show would be over just for me doing that disclaimer. It would take me that long to say those words. I mean, my gosh. It's catastrophe. Just let you know.
See, you know what it is? It's because I pronounce letters instead of the sounds. I do that all the time with my dyslexia, and that's why I have pronunciation issues,
right?
Because I pronounce the letter as I see it, right?
Well, sometimes I get my syllables wrong, so it's okay. So anyway.
Well, there we go. We're even, right?
All right, there you are. Yeah. I'm a Bubba from southern part of the U.S. in the state of Tennessee, where Jack Daniels is made, and the Grand Ole Opry is alive, and country music is alive, and all that. So we have a twang, and like I said, it was amazing just hearing you go all those words. That would have been a 45-minute sermon. All right.
Maybe that's something I could do in the future as a sermon.
There you go. I'll loan you a
Oh
few
my
if you-
goodness, we're not having. So, Mark, I think we're having a little bit of technical issues here. We're having like some little glitches there. I don't know. The little worms are in
It
here
was just
digging in
on
my
you.
in my tea again.
I
I'm not sure what's
I
going
moved my
on.
head, so I was flowing well. I don't know what was going on. No, it's okay. Now, let me explain to the audience. Okay. Number one, I'm not the best looking guy in the world. In fact, I look better with a blurred screen. Okay. So that helps. If you're angry with what you see, my daughter and son-in-law got me one of those circle light things or whatever, and I've got it
The
on
big
me.
ring light.
Yeah. And there used to be a kids show back when I was a little guy, back in the Stone Age, and it was called Romper Room.
Oh, I remember that.
Well, those circle lights remind me of Romper Room. I really bad want to look in the middle of this light and I see Joey and I see Richard and I see, stop doing that. I want to do that. So anyway.
We're kind of giving our ages away here by mentioning these oldies, right? But
Well,
we
I
need to
remember
bring these
Bozo
oldies back.
Yeah, I remember Bozo the Clown and all that. Nowadays, you realize how many kids would be going into therapy if Bozo the Clown was still going strong? They'd
So,
be
Mark,
yelling, yeah. Uh-huh.
Mark, I want to get into who you were as a little boy and who you are now as a grown man. I know who you are because we've been talking back and forth. We're like
Sure.
brother and sister, right?
Yeah.
But for the listeners out there, who is Mark as a little guy and who is
Okay.
Mark now?
Very insecure. My father, now I'll preface with the fact that my father was actually beaten with chains as a child. So, I've gotten the occasional fist, the pops, that kind of thing. My dad, if I was the prince, he was the king of insecurity. And I think in some ways, the kids were a way for him to take things out for him to project. So he was definitely a product of his environment. Well, being that way, and then he used to brag about being able to give us a look, and it would scare us. And so you grow up, you're walking on eggshells. You're insecure because to him, I actually felt more of a property than of a son in a lot of ways. He and I didn't go off and do things together and that kind of thing. One of my brothers, he did, but with me, no. But I was the youngest of 5. But my mom was, bless her heart, she's still going today, and we talk, and she brought forth a lot of normality where I could play sports, I could do these kind of things. But I also began working at a very young age because my father owned a gas station, and or I should say that the adults had a phrase it was called nutting up. And if they said dad was nutting up, that means he was going to let it fly. He had lost it. He had went to that deep, dark place. Things were going to be thrown, etc. And I guess that's just kind of what a Southern term, was made up. Okay. It was just a made up Southern term. But I do believe that when you are raised in that way, just by one parent treated that way, you are struggling trying to find some validity or trying to find some purpose. You automatically don't think you're as good as anyone else and that kind of thing. I mean, you really don't know who you are. So sports was my outlet. I could throw a a baseball 94 miles an hour.
Oh, wow.
And played a little ball. And it was actually, I've had two stepdads in my life. Stepdad number one said, you ought to go to this tryout. And we were watching an Atlanta Braves game, the team from Atlanta, Georgia. And they were going to be having a tryout in North Carolina. Well, he talked me into it. I went. And in fact, I actually, about 2.5 years ago, spoke with the guy that actually tried me out. I told him what all I did at the tryout, and he said, "Well, Mark, I got to tell you something, brother." I said, "What's that, Mr. Rod?" He said, "I've got your file in my attic. I mean, in my attic." I said, "What?" He said, "No kidding. Seeing that you made it through the whole tryout and you did all this, I've got your file. I kept files on everybody that made it through these tryouts because they were likely going to end up playing somewhere." And I thought, wow. But I thought baseball was going to be my way of being somebody. I just had this need of being somebody. And when I was hit in a car accident, and I was also attacked by somebody within about 2 weeks apart.
Wow.
And my pitching hand was permanently damaged. So I ended up a big wrestling company out of New York. People know them today as WWE. They were at that point WWF, World Wrestling Federation. And they were big in Canada as well. Largest company in the wrestling company in the world. And so a couple people that worked with them actually lived in my hometown. They came, saw me, and said, "Why don't you go out to this ring with us?" And so I went. They said, you can handle yourself. You're pretty good. Well, anyway, then I met someone else. And finally, I ended up being trained. They wanted to see. This is back in the day where there weren't these wrestling schools. And I mean, they put you through HE double hockey sticks, if you were going to try to get into the business. So I trained on a 1-inch college wrestling mat on top of a concrete floor
Ooh.
for 4 months.
Wow.
And when I could work a 15-minute match on that, then they had me step into a ring. And then all these promoters, small-time promoters, were trying to get me and everything. But that's how I broke into the wrestling business. And there was a little town about 2 hour drive north of where I lived. And I got a call from a promoter. He was one of the most famous men in pro wrestling. He said, "Mark, can you come wrestle in Cleveland tonight? Because it's Cleveland, Georgia." I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Jody, I sure can." He said, "Well, can you leave soon?" I said, "Well, Mr. Jody, it's just a 2 hour drive. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I can leave here by 3 and I'll get there real early for you." He said, "Mark, you don't understand." I said, "What, Mr. Jody? What's up?" He said, "I've just been hired by Ted Turner. He just bought one of the biggest wrestling companies in the world. Come by here, get your contract, get your plane tickets. You're wrestling in Cleveland, Ohio tonight."
Wow.
So I was halfway. I had to go by CNN Center, of course, where the TV station CNN is. And the wrestling office was on the 12th floor. Security guard let me up and everything. And I'm going, wow, this is like a dream come true. Wow. My mind's blown. I mean, I packed my gear and left the house so fast. It was a 35-minute drive to CNN Center. And I was 20 miles down the road before my butt caught up with the rest of me. I left that fast, you know. And
We had what was it, the Road Runner that had the dust in the back of him?
yeah, that's about the way I was. Yeah. And then when my rear end caught up with me and slapped me, that popped me on over faster to CNN Center. So they had a contract with Delta Airlines. So I got my ticket, went to the airport, which was 15 minutes away, and flew. And I walk in to the arena, and all these legends are there. And that was the first time I ever thought, gosh, I made it. So that's where the small town boy gets to the guy that says he made it. The problem is that often when you think you've made it, unless you've got things aligned properly, psychologically, physically, everything, what's going to happen is you realize that dream is not the dream you thought it would be.
Right, our dreams kind of are like winky wonky, like it's like the chocolate factory. If you don't have all your stuff and ducks in a row, it's a real challenge sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, leaving the wrestling business, I was going to prison for 20 years.
Mark, I didn't know that. You didn't tell me any of that before.
Yeah, I was going to prison for 20 years because of steroids and stuff. And a sheriff in Spalding County, Georgia, gave me a break and gave me a lease on life. And so I never had to report.
Well, that's good.
And so that right there, I saw God working. I mean, it was crazy. I've been privileged, and to the listeners out there, I would say to each of you, sometimes you have to look for it. The evil in this world is going to have you convinced that you have not had a fair shake, or life is against you. You'll never make anything. I mean, there's just a lot of lies. I mean, every time we see an advertisement on TV, if we don't wear this, eat that, or do this, then we're a failure. That's basically what they're selling, the fear of failure.
Yeah.
And I still don't know what the Pepsi generation is. I tried to find it. I couldn't find it. And I found the steroid generation, never the Pepsi generation. But anyway, but
Mark, I just want to stop you for a second. We have a question here. You said when you got into the stadium with all of the legends,
yeah,
you had this feeling. They want to know if you could describe that feeling in one word. Being a young a
young
little
guy.
small town boy coming into this big arena and seeing everybody in front of you. How did you
Unbelievable.
feel? Unbelievable. Mark, at that time when that happened to you, did you feel like you deserved that experience?
Probably. And it's because I was so self-centered that it's that part that's not aligned, that think you deserve everything. You're selfish. Youth definitely was not in my favor. Therefore, I had no wisdom. So it's kind of like these stars, movie stars, or especially musicians that make it so fast. And then they're all of a sudden, they look around and go, what do I do? I'm here. What do I do? And the only thing you do is you follow the crowd. And for that, it was, marijuana, cocaine, all this other stuff. It was prevalent. It was around everywhere. And then the physical pain. And so you learn from the other guys how to deal with it. And there were some clean ones. But boy, the drugs were there. The drugs were there. And the fans would give them to you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. See, these are the stories that we don't hear, right? And Mark, when I seen your story, I was like, I need this. I need to hear this story. Wrestling with the demons.
Mm-hmm.
What demons did you wrestle with besides the wrestling?
Yeah. Right. Demons. First wife left me. I found a positive pregnancy test in the trash can. Did not know. I still don't know what happened. All I was told was things are taken care of. So I don't know if I was part of a child being aborted. If that happened, I don't know. Destroying relationships, being willing to hurt anybody at any time. And if it's in the ring, being willing to hurt anybody at any time for basically any price. Forgiving. Of course, with that, you're talking about carrying grudges.
Yep.
And those are a lot of demons. And when Brenda and I got married, I was a youth minister at a church. I still was fighting demons. I was fighting the demons because I physically hurt so bad that on one occasion I had the pills laid across the bed. And I was thinking, I can't deal with this anymore. The demons of feeling like my best years are behind me. Therefore, what do I have to live for? And if it wasn't for the love of the children and Brenda, I wouldn't be here.
And I want to get into that story of Brenda and the children, but I want to get into, because I asked you for your tea and you gave me trust enables action. I want to get into the tea a little bit. And I think that's going to flow into Brenda and the children, because we were
Mm-hmm.
talking backstage, and I think it's truly amazing what you do, Mark, for these kids. But why those words? What does trust
Trust.
enable action?
Well, trust. Uh, I think everyone, and I'm not Bible slapping here or anything like that. I think everybody needs a foundation, if that makes sense. They need a foundation. I mean, after all, in a sense, we do have a foundation. Not everybody goes out killing everybody. I mean, if you think about it, whether it's the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, you think of just laws that we think are so simple, everybody ought to know them. There had to be a foundation for man to feel like those laws needed to be laws. So we actually do have a foundation. Some people don't want to admit it, but we kind of do. See, they're afraid if they admit there's a foundation to who they are and what they should be, then that creates accountability.
Right? And we can't be doing that,
Isn't
can
that
we?
isn't that isn't that whoa, isn't that a hot spot there?
You're
Accountability.
right.
I feel like I see every day that accountability is something that people try to run from the most. Which really, accountability is actually more freedom. Think about this. You're in class, you're in school. They say, okay, the rules. Don't talk while I'm talking. Do your work. And take notes. That virtually says everything else is open.
Yeah.
You do that, and then you're not having in-school suspension. You're not having all this stuff. There are no consequences. Why? Because you just followed us. You're accountable for just a few things. People spend, it seems like they spend so much time and effort running from accountability, when accountability can be freedom. And trust for me was I felt like I had dug myself into such a hole that there was only one way out. And it was, I was going to be lowered into a hole. But I said, okay, big boy, you up there? Show me. And I dared him. If people think that God's not big enough to be put on the spot, they don't understand God. I was on a podcast not long ago, and they wanted to know about, can you wrestle with God? And I actually said, yes. I read up on it. Yes, you can wrestle with God. And if you think about it, that's about the closest you can ever be to him. Because it's like in a ring. If I'm back in a corner and you're back in a corner, and there's this 18 foot of distance, you really can't get into one another and go at it. But if you're wrestling, you're probably finding out more about each other than any other time.
Right? The
Because
relationship with God is a wrestling match.
There's total exposure. And what it's also doing is, when you're in that wrestling match, you're showing your vulnerability. And so trusting in that way, began saying, okay, if you're actually changing me, I'm seeing things happen. If you're changing me, and you're also using other people to do it, to give me the guidance I need, people that I don't even know, man, okay, you're doing this. So if I trust, and all of a sudden the grudges started going down, the hate started going down, this stuff started going down. Well, when that stuff starts going down, the love starts going up. I actually said a prayer one time. I was in a group of people. Brenda was beside me. We had gone out maybe for 4 months. I said, all right, God, curious, am I ever going to get married again? If I am, I need a sign. All of a sudden, this woman poked me in the back. She did. She said, son, I have a word for you. And I thought, you poked me in the back again. I'm going to have a few for you. It wasn't going to be God bless you. I'm telling you that much.
Well, there's your sign, right? Who was it that always used to say, there's your sign?
Bill Engvall.
Right?
Yeah.
There's your sign.
Well, she says, I don't know what you prayed for, but your answer is right beside you. I said, okay, message received.
You can stop poking.
You stop poking. Yeah. And so that is actually, that really happened. I was getting people poking me all the time, telling me something. And I'm thinking, crap. And everything they're saying is right. Everything they're saying happened.
So how did Brenda go from the poking Brenda to the wife of Mark?
Well, this woman that poked me now, her hair had gone through gray, white, and it was past blue into purple. I figure she was Abraham Lincoln's prom date. Okay. Now, how did Brenda become my wife? Okay. We were just continually going out some, and it got to be just a natural thing. We knew what time we were going to go out and everything like that. After a while, you just stop asking. It's just a normal thing. It was that way for both of us. And she looked at me one day. She says, "By the way," I said, "Yeah." She says, "I've been doing a little talking to him too." I said, "Him?" She looked up. I said, "Okay." She said, "Yeah, I feel all right about marrying a minister." Well, then, doggone it, I get a letter from a school in Iowa that wants to give me a free ride. And we end up getting married after only dating each other like 6 to 7 months.
Wow.
Because if we go as a married couple, we get more benefits and everything. And we already knew we were going to get married. So might as well just bite the bullet. Just do it. Do the Nike. Just do it.
Just do
all right,
it.
Nike. I want a free pair of shoes because of that. All right.
Nike, if you're listening, or anybody that knows Nike, get the man a pair of shoes.
I need some shoes. Okay. I hope that was pitiful enough. I need some shoes. Anyway, but so, we had some fun with it. When people said, when y'all get married, about time for y'all to tie the knot. I said, yeah, your invitation is actually in the mail. Really? I said, yeah, Brenda's pregnant. She wasn't. We had so much fun making people think we were getting married because she was pregnant. And we loved it because it just ticked off our families that we would say that. That just made it more fun. Anyway, so we did. We actually Mike Curb with Curb Records. Some of his people heard us. That's where we were doing concerts all over the place. Chicago, up toward Minneapolis, also in Indiana and all these places. And we would go to Florida and do some Texas, blah 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 blah. And if it wasn't for the concerts, we couldn't have eaten. We probably wouldn't have been able to afford to eat, really. But that's the story. And Brenda she tells me today that even back then, I said, you know what, we're going to be foster parents one day. So that's that story.
Well, because you were telling everybody you were going to have a baby, so you had to have a baby eventually, right?
I guess so. We didn't know you could have babies in courtrooms, though. We didn't know how that worked.
Well, and that's the difference of, the different families out there that we don't talk about, and people that adopt. And we were talking about this before we went live, and that's why we were a few seconds late, because we got into a nice conversation in the back, Mark. And I think for the listeners out there, we need to bring that to the table, right? Is the difference that you make by adopting a child. We were talking about them not feeling like a trophy and property. Let's get into that a little bit, but I want to get into how you got your adopted children.
Well, what happened was, as I said, Brenda told me years ago that, I don't know, 20 something, 30 years ago almost now, that I'd mentioned about fostering. And I really didn't understand fostering. What happened was we were serving in a church, and these kids came in that we had never seen before. Found out they were in the system. Found out that one of them, or a few of them, lived with a woman that put a padlock on her refrigerator. And we thought that was pretty bad. These kids would get $1 a day allowance. And another foster parent was, if they went through McDonald's or anything, they would not be like a parent and pay for their child's meal. They would make the child pay for it out of their allowance.
Wow.
And so we started hearing these things, and man, it was really bothering us. So we said, okay, we'll do training, and we'll do it through an agency so that we are better equipped, in that we have more tools. So we did that. The first girl we ever had, it was a girl, 15 years old, with 2 babies. Not twins. She got pregnant the first time when she was almost 14. Well, we taught her how to be a parent. We also were like grandparents to the children. The girl ended up graduating high school, which she was not. They were not thinking she was going to do it. And with a decent grade point average, she could have went to college, decided not to. The judge told her that she should not have her kids back, but by law, she was able to get them. She had to give them, or the kids. Well, she lost the kids in a year. Well, someone else adopted them, because once a kid cannot come back to your house. And so, come to find out, we had more pictures of the children than anyone else. So we actually are in contact with a family that adopted those kids.
Oh, that is cool.
Another one is that a girl that had been through in this region, had been through every home, was with us for like a year and a half, 2 years. We were actually talking adoption, and she was a hellion and a half. I'm telling you what. Well, she finally one day said, I just want to leave. I said, well, now think about what you're saying. I said, don't say it again. She said it again. And I said, okay, let's go shopping. I took her and handed her over to the caseworker. Her eyes were big. She realized Daddy wasn't playing. Of all things, she wrote me about 2.5 years ago, listed the things she had done, and said, I'm so sorry. Could I be a part of the family? I said, honey, you never have not been a part of the family. For Christmas, she gave me, her present to me were adult adoption papers.
Wow. It's the impact, right? The change that you make in a child's life when you take the time to listen.
Even if they don't know it then.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know it then. For most of these kids, they do know right from wrong. If they are doing wrong, they're wanting to see if you love them enough to get them to do right. You do get some really sad situations. We had a situation where a girl was raped by her stepdad, and her mother was laying there watching it in bed. You get the sad stuff. You get the physical abuse. You get the kids that when they're brought to your home, and you met them, a couple of them today, that all they had was a t-shirt, one t-shirt, one pair of shorts, and a pair of flip-flops that were 2 or 3 sizes too big. That's all they had to their name.
Wow.
But the thing about fostering is, don't go into it baby shopping.
Right?
If you can do it in love, do it. If the parenthood is going to come about, it will come about, and it will come about very naturally. As I told you earlier, in the States, when you're in the system a year, they want that child to be adopted. Well, I'm sorry, nobody's telling me I've only got a few months to decide if I'm adopting a child or not, if I'm going to make that change to our family. It's going to be on me and Brenda's time.
Yeah.
And that's why things have worked out so well. Right now, we have 3 biologicals, we have 5 adopted, we have a Caucasian, 2 Hispanic, 1 African American, and 1 American Indian. So, when they ask me my race, I just check all the boxes, because when our African American son Jefferson, when we raised our hands, and said we would, take each other and make the vows, he looked at me and he said, "Dad, you're black now." I said, "By Lord, I am." So, he came up with this on his own, and he says, "Guess what else you can do, Dad?" I said, "What?" He says, "'Cause you're black, you can see in the dark." I said, "What?" He was just cracking jokes. And
He's got a good sense of humor.
oh yeah, they do. They have great senses of humor. And we've taken them to Florida, to all different states and things. They've traveled. They've met famous people, which is kind of cool. They've met some guys I used to wrestle with and so forth. And every once in a while, I'll go down and help train a few wrestlers. And I may take them with me just to.
So, are you still wrestling, Mark?
I actually am thinking about doing a 2 or 3 match farewell tour. That's with 2 hip replacements, a knee replacement, bone spurs in my thoracic and cervical areas, with over 30 concussions. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about maybe doing 2 or 3 more matches for a goodbye.
Oh, wow. So I found out that you're a recording artist when I did some of my research. So where does the recording artist come in?
Well, what happened was, when we were in Iowa, we began getting heard by some, not only churches, but people that had recording studios. So then we began on a local level. We would to not infringe on copyrights, but do different songs and only do certain amount of copies of certain songs.
Yeah.
And then, to also not infringe on copyrights, what we would do is it would be by donation only. Brenda and I never charged to go anywhere. But one time, and I'll tell you this, in Chicago, we were poor. We had to eat hamburger helper without the hamburger. That's no joke. Our car was breaking down. I mean, we had stopped in Aurora, Illinois at a shop, and our car probably could, they said they didn't think it could make it to Chicago, but we had to go to Chicago and then head back to Des Moines, Iowa. And we were at a church and did 3 services that day, 3 different concerts, like 9 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and like a 5 o'clock or something like that. Never asked for anything. Well, the last song of the last concert, and we're broke. We maybe have $15 in the bank. Seriously. This pastor gets up, and I'll say his name, Ed Thibodeau. Great guy. Ed gets up and he just tells them, he says, "Folks, I think you ought to know something." And he told them how we didn't ask for anything or whatever. And we started hearing zippers unzip. And we're like, "What's going on?" Because we're exhausted. We drove through the night. Yeah. We're exhausted. At this point, we're on stage and we're sitting down, and our heads are almost like between our knees. We're just totally wiped out. We did 3 1.5-hour concerts in one day.
Oh, wow.
He said, "Would the ushers come up? Show Mark and them how you feel about them. We walked out with between $600 and $700.
Oh, wow.
I was
That's worth it.
crying like a baby. I was crying like a baby. And then we get to Tennessee, and trying to think of the guy's last name. I can't think of it right now. His first name was Mike. Mike Bailey. He was a singer for a group. He said, "I've got a recording studio. Come on in, guys. I'm going to do this for you for free." So we went in and we got about 500, 600 copies. And we did the entire album in one day.
Wow.
And again, donation only. But we were doing concerts in Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, the entire southeastern United States. So, we've been fortunate. And a guy named Johnny Russell, before he passed away, they were actually talking to us about appearing on the Grand Ole Opry.
Oh, wow. Have you ever been there, Mark?
Oh, I've been there as a fan. I've never been there to sing, but this was going to be to perform. So
Well,
that
you
was,
just never know, right? The dreams can. There's no end to a dream. You can get on that stage still.
if I do. But this is the thing. I'm at peace with it. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And I know there are these televangelists and everything talking about favor and that, you're going to get something so unbelievable. Hey, that could happen. But I'll tell you what, if you've got that T for the trust and you've got it there, that aligns everything else. With trust, you are enabled because you can build relationships. And with these relationships, you have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, when there's trust in your world and you can make relationships, that enables the dreams and the different things that you never thought of. It enables them to happen, and it enables other people to bless you. It really does. And it enables you to bless other people. There's something about that phrase, pay it forward.
Right?
Yeah.
And Mark, the trust, the enable leads to the action, right? The action and the steps that we take. You know,
Yeah.
you hear the word action and people think it's just move, but it's also the way that we treat people, one another, and how we bless one another and how we take the time to listen, like you've done with these children that you've adopted. And Brenda poking you in the back and saying, you know what, one day, you know, but I really think that your story is really incredible, Mark, because you bring real raw to the table and you say, you know what, just give it a try, just do it. you know we go right back to just do it, just try it, just
Yeah.
make that effort. you know uh we have a question here about your book, Wrestling with the Demons.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get the title?
Well, really, it took maybe 3 minutes. I was just mulling over in my head. My wife Brenda and I were talking about it, and I don't know. You, it just boom. I said wrestling with demons, and I think the demons part led me into the wrestling part. The part that says wrestling, because of the fact I've gotten so frustrated with the news. I've gotten frustrated where people are getting pulled out of their cars and getting beaten to death. In the city of Chicago, Illinois, 40 carjackings a day. Why are people walking into schools and shooting kids for no reason? we're hearing more and more stuff about child abuse nowadays. Child abuse. You turn on court TV, somebody's on trial because a kid was abused and perished. My gosh, if we cannot see the demons that are acting, and I'm talking about, like, what are demons? Right? They can be those feelings of insecurity, those feelings of fear, those feelings that I got to strike you before you strike me. Just pure anger at everybody and everything. Look, those are the kind of demons that just tear people down. And I truly believe in my heart of hearts that we're seeing that happen. I have a son that he's high functioning, but he is autistic. There's definitely some things that, you know, are not what we might consider normal. Okay. I mean, he and I've talked about it. I'm not, because the reason I talked to him about it is because I didn't want him to get down on himself. There's some things we can do, there's some things we can't do. But he asked me, he said, Dad, do you think we'll ever see a World War III? And I said, son, I kind of think we're already seeing it. But it's starting from it's not a bomb coming from another country. It's starting from the inside. What's worse than people turning war or turning to war on themselves?
Yeah.
Right. I'm seeing society hate itself. And so when I saw that and I said, my God, at what I'm seeing, what's really going on? People are killing other people because they're wrestling with their own demons. It took me 3 minutes to come up with that. And that's how the title progressed.
Well, I think when I've heard the title "Wrestling with Demons," I got an empowerment from it,
Really?
because we all have demons within us, right?
Mhm.
If we're taking accountability and responsibility of ourselves, we all have fault in us because we are imperfect human beings, and we all wrestle with the faith and understanding, right? And
Mhm.
we question God a lot. Why is this happening? Why did you put me here? How come I know this person? Why did this person come into my life? So when I heard the title "Wrestling with Demons," I understood it as an empowerment of, what, I'm wrestling with my demons within myself, but I'm also wrestling with the demons of the world, the demons that are not spoken about,
The evil. Yeah.
right, the evilness that's out there. And I'm like you, when you listen to the news, you get angry, you get frustrated, you're disgusted, right?
Well, I
Because
hate it. I mean, in the United States, a few years ago, just outside of St. Louis, Missouri, was a small town, Ferguson, and its citizens was burning the town, and the looting and things that take place. I believe looters are opportunists. Okay, but if we were to actually try to love our society, what effect would that really have? I mean, on the crime rate, on people, on the homeless. I mean, it's cruel. I mean, I know, we hear it every day. It's on the news every day here in the United States, that with people flooding into the United States the way they are, it's not that anybody's scared that, oh my goodness, this we're going to get overpowered by another society or anything like that. But the fact is there's not enough housing. There's not enough food that's available when you have 10,000 people crossing in a day. a border. You know what I mean? And how do you deal with all that to where it's not cruel to the people? Because what's so sad is if people are just flooding over, and if the only way they think that they can eat is to hurt someone else, and then they're going to jail, I mean, there's no
Yeah.
winner. And so it saddens me,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. It's not a bigotry, it's a sadness.
And I think this is why we need to get our stories out there, right? We need to start opening up. And yes, Wesley Curley, the second, I do see your comments coming in, and I will get them up in a bit. So thank you for tuning in and sharing. I will put up the comments that relate to the discussion. Thank you for tuning in. But Mark, I want to, the reason why we have to start sharing our stories and getting the hard stuff out there, getting the awareness out there, right, is to make a difference for the younger generation, to make a difference for these young generations that will probably not understand why the world is so angry at itself. You know, we by sharing our stories, we're actually healing the world because we're bringing openness, we're bringing heart and passion and purpose behind our stories, right? Like the passion and purpose you had when you were wrestling, when you were recording ministry, you know uh that's where the passion and purpose is for Mark, for you, right?
Mhm.
And for me, it's the tea. Like when we start serving our real authentic selves, then we really truly make a difference and we make a change in the world, right? Um,
And you're providing accessibility. That's
right.
the thing. Anyone can get in front of a group of people and do a fire, fire, rah, rah, rah. But I do believe people want genuine. They want what's genuine. And the best way if something works is to talk to someone that's used that product. And
Yeah.
in this, I'm using God as a product. I'm
Yeah.
referring to him as a product. But yeah, opinions are like, I'm not going to say it, but everybody's got one.
I
Okay.
think everybody knows it and has heard
All
it,
right.
right?
All right. Right.
Like,
Yeah.
me, when people come and give me their opinions and it doesn't resonate with me, I'm just like, that's like an onion. There's so many different layers.
Yeah.
And some layers are just not made for Miss Liz, and that's okay. Some layers are. But you know what? When it doesn't resonate, I'm not going to put it into my body. It's like cutting the onion and cooking the onion and putting it into your body. If it doesn't
Mhm.
resonate with your story and your mission and purpose in life, don't put it in, you know? And don't feed it. Don't give it attention if you know that it's going to bring in that, cuz onion sometimes, if it's not cooked right away, it can be poison. It can be deadly. So, I always use the onion as a metaphor because my grandma used to always say, you know what, peel those layers and you will see the onion come out.
I lost you for a second. I do agree with you as far as peeling the layers. I do agree. And Liz, you're frozen right now. I can't hear you. If the listeners can hear me, uh, to all of you listening, number one, I want to say I appreciate you doing so. And I hope I haven't been a waste of your time. If there's one thing I want you to remember today, that is God doesn't make junk. And if you don't know your purpose, you will, because sometimes things are not in our timing. It's like things have to be aligned. And believe me, I hate the word patience. I do. Okay.
And you know what? We had some little ringworms that were playing with Miss Liz's stuff again, and I kind of went down the ring hole. So, Mark, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
So, I just want to let you wrap up and give your final message to the audience and listeners
Okay.
out there.
Now,
Wesley, I
on the
again.
when you were out for a second, was I still on or was I out?
I think we were both in the ring hole. I think we were talking about
Okay.
the onion too
Okay.
much and they didn't like the onion. But,
Okay.
technology, right? And
Right.
that's what it is when we're podcasting and live shows. We have those glitches, but we just
Right.
got to come back and
Yeah.
we got to bring our best to the
Well, I
table.
was
So,
trying to fill the time, so I just I didn't know. What I was saying was very real, very truthful. Uh, those of you, if you did hear me, I apologize. I'm going to repeat, and that is, if you could walk away with one thing today or a couple things today, what I would like you to know is that God never has made a piece of junk. And I don't want you to ever refer to yourself as junk or to think of yourself as junk. If you have you do have a purpose, but if you don't know what that purpose is, look, take a moment back and reflect on things. Pretend you're looking at a movie screen. Maybe there are some cues we may have missed along the way. Or maybe yet you just haven't gotten that answer yet because things have to be aligned in the right timing. I would not have, a book 20 years ago was not in my future. But remember about wrestling with our demons. That is number one, it's okay to admit they're there. Don't ignore them. You'll never, ever win that battle if you ignore them. And the positive thing is this, just like in pro wrestling, I have had my sternum cracked. I couldn't breathe. I made myself over to a tag team partner and I made the tag. And really, that's what we can find in God. See, we've already been told that we've won the battle. So why don't we just let the most powerful of the tag team, which is him, why don't we let him in the ring and let him do his thing?
yep.
It's okay sometimes to let go. Those hurts, those demons, hey, you take care of them. You take care of them, and guess what? I got the victory. We all want to win. There's no reason we should lose. We will have those ups and downs, that's for sure. But you're loved. Number one, I can say, those of you I've never met, I love you. And this young lady over here loves you too, because she's helping provide these things. She wants to see you lifted up. She wants you to know in those darkest hours, you can say, okay, I know I'm loved. I think love's the greatest thing we have. And last time I read a Bible, it said God is love. Now, that ought to tell you something, right? So, folks, know you're loved. And today, let somebody else know you love them. And contact Miss Liz. If you want to talk, I know she would talk to you. But if you need to talk to me, I'm giving her permission right now to give you my email. Okay? Go to Amazon and get this book, please. because you need to know that you've won. You need that reminder in writing that you've won. There's probably something in my life that you might be able to relate to. In that way, you'll know by watching this video and having that book and knowing that story, you'll know you are not alone. Anyway, I love y'all. Thank you.
Well, Mark, I really want to just thank you for taking the time and sharing a good, strong cup of tea with me. We became brothers and sisters from another mother. This is how it works. When you really take the time and patience to build relationships with your guests, you really do impact lives. Mark is not just a 1 hour fill in. Mark is my big brother, and he's going to look out for me, and I'm going to look out for him. That's just the way it works. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, all the supporters and that. Wesley, I did see your comments. I will reach out to you and that. So thank you again. Thank you to all the supporters and listeners out there. And I will be back at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Wendy Hawkins, also known as WL Hawkins. And she'll be coming in and sharing about her new books and updates and all that because she's coming in from season 3. So we're in season 5 and we're going to have some really incredible updates. So be sure to check in. And if you're watching these tea times on replay, please push #replay and let me know where you're tuning in from. If you're tuning in from YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, all of those platforms, Rumble, wherever you're tuning in from, let me know so that I can reach out and give you a good shout out as well, because I appreciate that. And I want to give a special shout out to Business Mind Media for the amazing write up that they've done on Miss Liz. Check that out and thank you. I will be working with them for the next year, so you check them out and what they're doing with their business and their magazines and all that good stuff. So until then, I will see everybody at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Mark, don't leave. I'm going to talk to you in the back, and I'll see everybody tonight for the second tea time of this week in January.